Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAT VRC preparation. In today's session, we'll be taking up the RC that was asked in your CAT exam in the year 2017 in the first lot. It's titled as Maps Through History. I've titled the RC as Maps Through History and 523 words, 6 questions, in fact, this one has. And this is the first part of the session where I'll be taking you uh, through a detailed explanation of the passage. And in the next part, we'll be taking up the questions. Okay, now for those of you who might be watching these sessions for the first time, I'll just take you very briefly through the structure of the sessions. See, every single session caters to one RC, okay, and a session is made up of two parts. The first part is where I explain to you the passage in detail, paragraph by paragraph, and the second part is where I take you through the questions, where we discuss the questions. Okay, you are expected to have attempted the passage and read the passage and attempted the questions by yourselves. The link to do the same is available in the description of videos of both the parts. Okay. All right. Now, 40 such sessions make up a course that is titled as an anthology of RCs for your reading comprehension preparation for the CAT. All right. So I hope that's clear. Let's start. Okay, guys. So see, the way we'll go about understanding the passages. You have your screen visible, right, on your device. Now it is split into two parts. On the left side of the screen, you can see the passage. On the right side is a blank space, which will be filled by schematic diagrams as we read the passage. I'll be using these schematic diagrams to explain to you in detail every part of the passage. As simple as that. Okay. So yeah, let's start. Okay, so starting with paragraph 1. Understanding where you are in the world is a basic survival skill, which is why we, like most species, come hardwired with specialized brain areas to create cognitive maps of our surroundings. Where humans are unique, though, with the possible exception of honeybees, is that we try to communicate this understanding of the world with others. We have a long history of doing this by drawing maps. The earliest versions yet discovered was scrawled on cave walls 14,000 years ago. Human cultures have been drawing on stone tablets, papyrus, paper, and now computer screens ever since. So, guys, what the author has done here in this paragraph is basically just set up the backdrop for the discussion that he'll carry on in the upcoming paragraphs about map making, and that's what we can infer so far. And he basically starts with discussing that how the knowledge of your location of where you are. This is a basic survival skill, and for the same reason, all of us, all species, have been provided with like are hardwired to are hardwired and have specialized brain areas which are dedicated to creating the cognitive maps of your surroundings. Okay, and now in addition to that, in case of humans and honeybees, what they also have, apart from those special areas that create these cognitive maps of surroundings, what they also have is the ability to communicate this understanding of their world to the others, to their fellow beings. Okay, so he says that's something that they have, and then he goes on to say that how that this history, and we have had a long history so far as communicating our understanding of our surroundings is concerned via maps. We have been drawing maps on cave walls, stone tablets, papyrus, paper, and now on screens. Okay, so that's the first paragraph. Next, he says, given such a long history of human map making, it is perhaps surprising that it is only within the last few hundred years that North has been consistently considered to be at the top. Okay, in fact, for much of human history, North almost never appeared at the top, according to Jerry Broughton, a map historian. North was rarely put at the top for the simple fact that North is where darkness comes from. He says West is also very unlikely to be put at the top because West is where the sun disappears. Okay, so now this is where the author has actually, begun, according to the crux of his discussion, and he says that given this long history that we have, it is surprising for us of drawing maps across over ages since ages. It's very surprising. It's kind of surprising to note that the way we have the direction north always on the top on the maps that we use these days, right? So you must have noticed that whatever maps you use, the top always has the north direction, right? So the way we have the north as direction that is put on the top always these days on the maps, this has not been the case. This has not been the convention that has been followed for very long. Like in fact, this is something that we have been following only since the last few hundred years, and that's kind of a little surprising. And then he goes on, and he actually cites the cites information from a an expert, a map historian, Jerry Broughton, whom he cites, and Jerry Broughton, in his words, he says that well, not north was rarely put at the top of for the simple fact that north is where darkness comes from. So he has cited from this expert that as that the reason why north was hardly ever put at the top in the history of map making, because people used to think of there was a negative connotation associated with the direction of north. People used to think that north is where the darkness comes from, and that's why they would not be very comfortable putting north on the top of the map. Okay. So yeah, and he also notes from the same citing of the same expert. The author notes that the expert also says that even west would be very unlikely to be put at the top, because again, this west is where the sun disappears. So again, we both these directions, north as well as west, they both had negative connotations associated with them, and hence they were usually not put at the top. He has provided the reason. So in this paragraph he basically raises the question. He raises the surprise, express surprise as to wow, that well, north, the way the convention that that we normally take for granted, that north is always on the top of the map, has not been true for most of history. And then he cites the information from some expert, a map historian, to explain the reason behind that. Okay, so that's your second paragraph. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, guys, so next para. Confusingly, early Chinese maps seem to buck this trend, but Broughton says even though they did have compasses at the time, that isn't the reason that they placed north at the top. Early Chinese compasses were actually oriented to point south, which was considered to be more desirable than deepest, darkest north. But in Chinese maps, the emperor, who lived in the north of the country, was always put at the top of the map, with everyone else, his loyal subjects, looking up towards him. In Chinese culture, the emperor looks south because it's where the winds come from. It's a good direction. Uh, North is not very good, but you are in a position of subjection to the emperor, so you look up to him, says Broughton. Okay, so guys, in this paragraph, the author has basically examined an exception to the earlier point that he made, that in the past, almost no, like in the past, in history, almost no one used to put north as a direction on top of the maps, right? But the Chinese, but there's an exception in case of the Chinese. They actually have been putting north on top of the maps since ever. And then he preemptively disregards a potential explanation for that, and the explanation could have been that maybe the Chinese, because the Chinese have been using the compasses since so long, that's probably the reason why, and the compass needle points aligns along the north-south direction, right? And that's probably the reason, that might be the reason why they have been putting north on the top of the map since ever. But the author disregards this by citing Broughton, the expert, again, and he says that no, that was not the reason. It was placed, and in fact, the Chinese compasses were oriented to point towards south. So, anyways, that cannot be the reason. Rather, what actually was the reason was that in Chinese maps, the emperor, who lived in the north of the country, okay, was always put at the top of the map. Okay, so if the emperor is always put at the top of the map and the emperor lives in the north, then obviously the direction north has to be put at the top of the map, right? And everyone else, like all the subjects of the emperor, with everyone else, his loyal subjects, looking up towards him, with everyone else, his loyal subjects looking up towards him. So kind of to demonstrate the hierarchy there. Okay, and he further says that in Chinese culture, the emperor looks south. The emperor from the north at the top, he looks south because it's where the winds come from. It's where the winds come from. It's considered to be a good direction. North is not a very good direction, but you are in a position of subjection to the emperor, like from the perspective of the people who are being ruled, the subjects, the people. They are in a. It's not a good direction. North is not a good direction, but they still have to look towards north. But they anyways can't do anything about it because they are in a position of subjection to the emperor, so you look up to him, right? So that the author has provided as the reason for the exception to the rule, where north has not been put at the has been put at the top, right, in history, in case of the Chinese. So yeah, that's your third para. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, next one. Given that each culture has a very different idea of who or what they should look up to, it's perhaps not surprising that there is very little consistency in which way early maps pointed, right? So what he means to say is that the inconsistencies across cultures in terms of what they used to put up on the top of the maps is corresponds to what they used to look up to, corresponds to cultural factors as to what they used to look up to. So if I look up to something else, I'll point and then whatever direction I associate with that idea that I look up to, I'll put that direction on the top, right? So yeah. Next he says, and then he provides exemplifies this idea here. He says that in ancient Egyptian times, the top of the world was east, right? So so far as ancient Egypt is concerned, the top of the world was east. They used to associate a lot of value with east, the position of sunrise, because that was the position of sunrise, and that's the reason why they put east on the top of the maps. Okay. Next, early Islamic maps favored south at the top. Early Islamic maps favored south at the top, because most of the early Muslim cultures were north of Mecca. Because if most of the Muslim early cultures are north of Mecca, that means to look towards Mecca, which is their holy religious place, they'll be looking south, right? That means, and hence they attribute a lot of value to the direction south, because south is where their holy religious place lies, right? So hence they used to put south at the top. uh, so they imagine looking up south towards it. Christian maps from the same era, called Mappa Mundi, put east at the top towards the Garden of Eden with Jerusalem in the center, right? So Christian maps, they imagined the Garden of Eden to be in the east direction, and they associated value with it, and hence they put the direction east on the top. Okay, so that's what he has exemplified in this uh, paragraph. He basically has illustrated, he has made a point that the inconsistencies are mainly due to the differences in terms of cultural factors, and he has exemplified, he has illustrated those different cultural instances here. Okay. Okay, guys. So next, so when did everyone get together and decide that North was at the top? It's tempting to put it down to European explorers like Christopher Columbus and Ferdinand Magellan, who were navigating by the North Star. But Bruton argues, please note that every time the author brings in an argument, he always brings it via this map historian expert, Bruton. Okay, that sometimes that can be a very relevant and a crucial point for certain types of questions. Okay, where the question that has tried to differentiate between what the author believes and what he has reported. Okay, anyhow, next he says, but Breton argues that these early explorers didn't think of the world like that at all. When Columbus describes the world, it is in accordance with east being at the top. Okay, he says with east being at the top, he says Columbus says he is going towards paradise, so his mentality is from a medieval Mappa Mundi. We got to remember, adds Bruton, that at the time no one knows what they are doing and where they are going. Okay, so in the last paragraph he has finally raised a question then, that well, okay, maybe based on different cultural practices and different cultural considerations, different cultures used to have different direction on the top of the maps. But then what happened? When did everyone get together and decide, okay, now we're gonna just put north at the top, right? How did that happen? And then he again brings in preemptively disregards an explanation, a potential explanation that maybe it was the European explorers who used to navigate by the northern star, and maybe because of them, people started putting north at the top of the map. But then again, using Broughton's argument, he disregards that idea, and he's via Broughton, the author says that that these early explorers didn't think of the world like that at all, right? And especially when Columbus describes the world, it is in accordance with east being at the top. Okay, when he says that he's going towards paradise, that means he's going to the top towards paradise. Paradise is at the top. Okay, his mentality is from a medieval Mappa Mundi. His mentality is from a medieval Mappa Mundi. That means the Christian maps, which used to consider the Garden of Eden to be to be at the top as a paradise in the east direction, right? And it's so even he used to consider top, put east as a direction, as the direction on the top of the map, right? So anyhow, so the point being that the navigation of the European explorers by use of the North Star cannot be explained, given as a proper reason as to why people have now started using, have now started putting the direction north at the top of the maps. Okay. So yeah, so it closes with speculation on an incomplete note. He does close the passage with an incomplete note because, well, like the answer has not been provided here, right? The question that why people have started putting north at the top. Only what used to happen and what potentially cannot be an explanation has been provided. Okay, so yeah, that's about the passage explainer. Okay, guys, so coming to the central idea, it can be summed up in the following lines. The usually taken for granted implicit notion that maps have always had north at the top is erroneous. Rather, different cultures in the past had different directions at the top, basis what they considered to be valuable. So that's your central idea. Let's move on to the next part. Okay, guys. So with this, we have come to the end of the session. Now, for those of you who may have not attempted the questions, you can do so by clicking, by following the link which is given in the description of the video. And the others who have not seen the other RC videos, who would like to attempt the other RCs from this course and the Anthology of RCs, you can go to the playlist of this course on my YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel by clicking here. It will lead you to the playlist. And yeah, so that's about the session. And if you like the video, let me know in the comments, and do subscribe to the channels. That goes for your CAT VRC preparation. Signing off.